For more than a millennium, the Tibetan Book of the Dead has remained shrouded in mystery, revered as a spiritual guide beyond life. Known as the Bardo Thödol, this ancient manuscript is not just a religious text, but a true map of consciousness in the afterlife, describing the intermediate stages preceding rebirth. Attributed to the master Padmasambhava, known as the Lotus Born, the book played a fundamental role in the spread of Tantric Buddhism in Tibet. However, this knowledge was not immediately revealed to the world. Padmasambhava is said to have concealed his words, foreseeing that humanity would only be ready to comprehend them in a future time. The teachings were sealed in termas, spiritual capsules hidden in the physical and mental landscape, awaiting the right moment to be rediscovered. The text details the bardos, intermediate states between death and rebirth, which are not merely transitions but opportunities to attain enlightenment. At the moment the heart stops, consciousness encounters the clear light, a pure manifestation of the true essence of being. Those who can recognize this light may free themselves from the cycle of rebirth, but this requires spiritual preparation. The Dalai Lama himself has stated that understanding the process of dying is essential for a fulfilled life, since the way we live directly reflects the experience of our passage into the beyond. Interestingly, modern researchers have been drawing parallels between these ancient teachings and near-death experiences, NDEs, raising an intriguing question. Did ancient Tibetans already understand consciousness in a way that science is only now beginning to explore? Ancient wisdom and modern science. Bridging the gap, recent scientific studies are beginning to reveal striking similarities between the descriptions of the Bardo Thödol and NDE reports. One of the most notable examples comes from the Dutch cardiologist Pim van Lommel, whose groundbreaking research followed hundreds of patients who survived cardiac arrest. In a study published in The Lancet, he observed that many of these patients reported floating outside their own bodies, watching their resuscitation and encountering an intense, welcoming light, experiences that echo the Tibetan descriptions of the bardos. Even more impressive is the fact that these patients, despite the absence of measurable brain activity, were able to accurately describe events occurring around them. Another significant researcher in this field, Dr. Bruce Grayson, from the University of Virginia, analyzed how these experiences profoundly alter the perception of life and death. He found that individuals who underwent NDEs often lose their fear of death and develop an expanded sense of compassion and purpose. Interestingly, these psychological transformations resemble those described by Tibetan monks who meditate on the Bardo Thödol. Science is beginning to pose questions once confined to spirituality. Can consciousness transcend brain activity? And if so, what does that tell us about our own existence? The final moments. What happens at the threshold of death? Neuroscience studies bring even more intriguing discoveries. Researchers at the University of Michigan observed that, in the final moments before death, there is a sudden surge of electrical activity in the brain, similar to what is observed during deep meditation states. Ancient Tibetan texts describe this moment as the final clarity, where the mind can experience expanded perception before its definitive transition. Could this neural surge be the scientific manifestation of the clear light mentioned in the Bardo Thödol? Dr. Sam Parnia, a resuscitation specialist at NYU Langone Medical Center, believes so. He suggests that consciousness may continue to exist for a period after clinical death, challenging the traditional view of death as an absolute end. If these discoveries begin to validate teachings from centuries past, an inevitable question arises. How can we prepare for this transition? In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the passage from life to death is not seen as an end, but as a decisive moment of liberation. The text emphasizes that spiritual practice during life can prepare the mind to recognize the clear light and avoid states of confusion that lead to unconscious rebirth. Spiritual training. A key to a conscious transition for Tibetan masters, this preparation does not occur only at the moment of death, but throughout one's entire existence. Consciousness must be trained not to be swayed by fear and material attachment in the final moment. This is achieved through constant meditation, mindfulness practice, and the cultivation of compassion, which help the mind remain stable and lucid in the transition between worlds. Additionally, the repetition of sacred mantras and the visualization of the clear light during life are spiritual tools used to reinforce this connection at the crucial moment of transition. In recent years, practices such as dream yoga and phawa, consciousness transfer at the moment of death, have been studied by neuroscientists and spiritual practitioners as effective methods for facing death with serenity. These techniques teach that, when we sleep, we experience a small death every night. Thus, by maintaining lucidity in dreams, we train the mind to recognize the bardo stages when physical death occurs. This continuous training allows individuals to have greater control over their spiritual destiny, breaking free from the automatic cycles of rebirth and awakening to a higher reality. Beyond mystical visions, science is also delving deeper into the experiences that occur at the moment of death. Research reveals that many terminal patients describe a sensation of peace and a radiant light in their final moments, something widely documented by psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She identified common patterns in these reports, including encounters with deceased loved ones and a sense of detachment from the physical body. This reinforces the idea that death may not be merely the extinguishing of consciousness, but rather a transition to another state of being. A lifelong preparation. The Tibetan monastic approach in Tibet. Monks spend years training for the moment of death through meditation and practices such as dream yoga. This practice involves maintaining awareness during sleep as a means of preparation for the transitional states of the bardo. For them, the way we live our daily lives is a rehearsal for what we will encounter after death. The more we are aware of our emotions, thoughts, and attachments, the better prepared we will be to recognize the clear light and navigate the bardo with clarity. The mental discipline acquired over years of practice allows these monks to face death not as a dreaded event, but as a natural transition. They believe that by cultivating mindfulness and developing a detached perspective toward the illusions of existence, the mind strengthens itself to traverse the bardo stages without getting lost in confusion and fear. In this way, continuous training and conscious observation of life's impermanence become essential to ensuring a peaceful and conscious passage to the next stage of existence. What can we learn from the Tibetan Book of the Dead? Ultimately, the teachings of the Tibetan Book of the Dead suggest that death is not the end, but a transformation, a doorway to new experiences of consciousness. Whether we view it through the lens of spirituality or emerging scientific research, one thing becomes clear. The nature of consciousness is far more mysterious than we once thought. The ancient Tibetans understood this mystery deeply, offering practical tools for a conscious transition beyond life. In light of these revelations, we are left with a final question. How can we integrate these teachings into our daily lives? If the way we live determines the way we die, then every act of mindfulness, every moment of introspection, and every effort to cultivate compassion prepares us not just for the afterlife, but for a more awakened existence here and now.